ability.
This might be the greatest predictor of success in the music business. If your ability to self-reflect and criticize yourself.
I don't know what the exact figures are, but more artists don't have the ability to do that than do.
Peace, what's going down? Welcome back to the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. We're still going as the music industry is shutting down all the major labels. Everyone's going on vacation. We're not, you're not. So the last thing you should do is Erinn's probably taking the break. So, I mean, we're all celebrating with family, but I'm still going to be looking at my phone for beat inquiries, etc. But it's a great time to take a little bit of time to schedule out, plan out your 2025 release strategy rollouts. And twolost.com, if you use the code MEC, will provide you with 3 free months of premium music distribution. So I don't think there's a better time than now. The next better time would be, I don't know, next week, tomorrow, something like that. So get your stuff scheduled. It's a good time. A lot of people slow down in the winter, but fans have not slowed down when it comes to listening to music. So get your stuff up. twolost.com, code MEC, 3 free months of premium music distribution. Your music doesn't get deleted once the trial ends either. So don't worry about that.
So this is random. There's a cat that's going to be on the upcoming season of Rhythm and Flow. And I was talking to him, and this is about releasing music. This was what made me think about it, because you just talked about releasing music. And he doesn't have plans to release any music when it drops. I was like, what? Like, he has content. I might even have him on here, or it might be independent living. I'm not sure. But get your what are y'all waiting for? Like, what are y'all waiting for to release?
What's his reasoning?
He just wants to, what was his reason? He says he has a lot of content to drop, but no music. I was like, well, at least maybe a plan to promote what you already have, like to re-promote music, that you, like, you say you just want to drop content, get people more familiar. I'm like, oh man. I mean, unless even if he's only on like 1 week or he gets kicked out, I forget how the show works. There has to be some type of elimination process, but I forget exactly how it works. I don't know how many weeks he's on the show. But what are y'all waiting for to release? Like, what are you waiting for? Like, even with the holidays coming up, I think he mentioned that. He said, I don't really want to compete with the holidays and Mariah Carey. I'm like, you guys, release your music.
I hate Christmas music. I don't listen to Christmas music. I'm actively looking for shit to listen to when everybody is inundating the internet with Christmas music. So and there are a lot of people like me who aren't celebrating that holiday or don't engage with that music. So what?
Yeah, artists, you need to have a team around you to talk you off the ledge or to encourage you to just get on the right path, because you guys continue to hustle backwards. And it's not as frustrating to see because I don't work directly with artists anymore, like on the team outside of Big Job. But it's still like a shake your head moment when you see people with so much potential moving backwards. It's
every day, or not. You might not even know their potential, but you just know that they lack common sense. I recently posted because I got a comment from someone saying, "Oh, it's so crazy. I saw one of Sabrina Carpenter's hits used a splice sample, and somehow it became popular." And my reply was, "It's almost as though no one cares if you use loops or not, as long as the song's good." And a bunch of the responses from producers were, well, who cares what the listeners think? I care. I'm like, there you go. That's why you're not doing shit. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, and I know we said we were going to, and I guess we can skip our wins today, whatever. We were going to start with Erinn's topic, but this actually is perfect for the other topic with Ja'Cory. And I'll tell you guys why once we play the clip and you get a chance to cue it up, Payne. Where he talks about more music executives should release educational content. So Ja'Cory is one half of the No Labels Necessary podcast, Contraband agency, super knowledgeable. Those guys do great work and post a lot of clips. Some, I'm sure, just for the views and the clicks, but some have a lot of good information in them. But here we go.
The idiocy that you feel like you see in the artist community. And the reason you don't get to do that is because with all your expertise, with all your knowledge, with all your wins, with all your lessons you've learned in the music industry, you refuse to share it with these people. Thus, you are a part of the idiocy. But I really do think that if 10% of the professionals in music industry got on and started making content from their experiences, from their individual perspectives, the industry as a whole would be a better place. Like I said, I remember talking to artists in 2018, trying to convince them to run an Instagram ad versus talking to an artist today in 2024, trying to convince them. It's a much easier game because they understand so much more. So I would even assume that, like, most of these executives, most music industry professionals, like, they plan to be in it for a long time. Like, I haven't met one person yet that's like, I'm gonna get this shit 3 years, bro, and I'm gonna be out. I ain't met nobody yet that's like that. So I don't get why you wouldn't do it to make your job in the future easier. You don't get to complain about the idiocy that you feel like you see.
It started over, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to get that first line in because it cut off because of Instagram. Oh man.
See, here's the thing. No matter how many people say let's just assume that what people say is completely correct. And that's a whole other conversation, because you have a lot of these music execs that are going to get on podcasts and then say a lot of stuff that will confuse you and be just completely wrong because their experience doesn't align with how independent artists need to move today. All right, that's one conversation. The other conversation is, like, even if people continue to tell you the right thing, like, the artists are not going to listen. They can be 25 people, 80 people. Like, we don't need more people saying it. There has been some movement, like more people are running ads now, but how many more people, and this is probably going to sound, well, why do you have a podcast, Dame? And maybe that's something I need to ask myself, but how many more people do you need to tell you to be consistent, to own your data, to build community? Like, how many more people do we need to say the exact same thing? Like, artists they're still going to look for shortcuts, backdoors, things that don't exist, big red buttons. They're still going to look for things that don't exist to avoid doing the work. We don't need more people saying the exact same thing. And maybe some other things that are just wrong and just confusing people. I completely disagree with Jaquest, my guy. But I hard disagree. But there was somebody in the comment, because I said, please, no, I didn't explain myself. I said, please, no, we don't need more people doing this. Somebody responded and said, I'm not going to go to it, but basically that I'm a hater and that I'm gatekeeping information.
That's true.
I probably have more educational content on the internet than 99.999% of even educators in this space. It's like, the last thing I want to do is gatekeep information. It's not going. I've been in this long enough to know that more people giving information is not going. The information is already out there. It's out there. It's right in your fucking face. If you don't apply it, that's on you.
I mean, anyone can go to the library for free and get the Donald Passman book, and at very least understand the very basics of the music business. That book has been around for decades. It continually gets updated. There are new editions. I just think it goes back to this exceptionalism in the music business, where in the music business, we have every excuse for an artist that doesn't understand the field that they're in. But you don't see content like this about lawyers. You don't see someone saying, if you're a lawyer, you can't complain about your associates, because they've already been through training, and that's gatekeeping. School, education, all of that is gatekeeping. The LSATs, that's gatekeeping. In every other field, there's gatekeeping. If you're a carpenter, your apprenticeship and you're being a journeyman and all that, that's gatekeeping. You have to walk through different gates, but only in music do we call everything gatekeeping only when the person who is supposed to benefit and thrive because they've self-selected to be in that business ends up not listening and not taking that journey seriously. Now it's gatekeeping because somebody who decided they wanted to be the richest rapper on the planet or the hottest producer on the globe last week can't find an immediate path to success. Everyone else is gatekeeping. Well, have you read a book? I ain't trying to read that shit. Why don't you tell me the answers, old ass hater?
Old ass
bitch.
Hater.
What?
Old ass hater is hilarious.
If you want to get an entry level position in food service, you have to probably fill out an application and maybe interview, maybe drug test. Gatekeeping. You expect the music business to be easier? You expect you're all of a sudden gonna wake up with 5 beats on the Glorilla album, or you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be getting a feature from Drake? And if you don't, oh, that's gatekeeping. Someone should have taught you. I'm not saying that's what's being said in that clip, but that's the culture that I'm seeing, and it's wild. And I feel like those of us who work with artists are the ones that have the most right to complain. You know what I mean? Furthermore, I'll say this, that call to people who understand the music business to make content, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm living it, and it's some of the most frustrating shit ever. I mean, it's especially because, look, I'm a musician. I'm not a music exec. So maybe this doesn't apply to me. But I take time out of making music, which directly benefits me on a business level, on a spiritual level. That makes me feel good making music. And that's what I do. That's how I pay the bills. That's how the lights stay on. But I'll take time out of that to make educational content. And it's like people spit in my face every time I do. It was this one week where like 2 of my cousins died, my aunt died. It was just a rough week. And then I still dragged myself in front of the camera and made a video because people were asking me to explain a comment I made about selling a certain beat. So I explained it. And all I got was pushback where people were like, this video is trash. You're lying to everybody, this, that. I know what I'm like, bitch, you don't know what, you've never been here. And I don't make any money making this content. This is not something that pays my bills. I don't get a plaque because my YouTube video breaks 100,000 views, which is rare if that has even happened this year. It's just such a thing. I'm just screaming into the void sometime, and I think, damn, it takes a lot of energy to do this. So maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe the No Labels Necessary podcast, they just have a healthier outlook, and they're seeing more progress with the information they put out. They might be. I don't know. I'd be curious to talk to them about the response they get and how that feels.
I'm glad they're starting to post like their perspective, because a lot to build their page, they just posted a lot of other people's stuff with like no context and things like that. And I think that that's actually not helpful most of the time. I'm glad I've seen more of their own perspectives, at least weaved in, or separate videos. So I'm glad they're actually sharing their perspective. I think that's helpful. But my actual response was, please don't. There's already enough good info out there. We don't need any more podcasts. And then the cat responded, this is a hating gatekeeping comment and a part of the issue as a podcaster, homie. Bad form. Game is game. Not everyone's journey is the same. Come on, bro. Information is key in life. Let people choose who they connect with to get it from. You ain't the only person with knowledge and information. We're well aware that there's many ways to pursue music. We pretty much say that every single week. But information or lack of information is not the reason why the industry seems fucked up to a lot of people. And it's not the reason that you're not winning. So, Erinn, you want to weigh in on this topic before we move on?
Definitely. I love Sean and Jacory, but this is a wild ass take to me. Like, what? I have for a decade, well, I didn't even last a full decade with it. I managed for 13 or 12 and a half of the 13 years I've been in this industry For probably the first 6 to 7 years, I tried with every artist that I managed to send them articles relevant to their genre and what they were going through at the moment. Never did they read them. Maybe occasionally they would skim the title, right? Because I wouldn't even send them books, right? Okay, 1 year, I'll tell you this. It was 2020, 2021, when Brent Faiyaz's manager wrote his book, F You Money, you know what I'm saying? Fuck You Money by Ty Baisden. I was like, I bought a stack of them and handed them out to my artists. There are things addressed in the first 5 pages that we were having conversations about for the next 2 years. So I know they didn't read the book, right? But before that was my last, like, damn, like they don't listen to shit, right? But what they'll do is I'll send them an article, and then 2 months later they'll be like, I was on TikTok and I heard da 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 da. It's like the truncated version with no context of the article that I'm talking about. Right? So it's like, that's a crazy thing. And the reason I'm sending articles is because when I bring up something in a meeting, in one ear, out the other, and then 3 months, 6 months, 8 months later, they tell me, I was in the shower and I was thinking, and I think we should do what I suggested on the meeting 8 months ago. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's not, I'm by nature and by nurture an educator. I want people to learn. I want to teach people, even if it doesn't benefit me, because it benefits the world and the overall global diaspora that I'm trying to affect. So when I'm working with artists who look like me, I definitely want you to be educated. So that's a crazy statement. But it's really wild coming from Jacory because he works with artists. I'm like, do the artists that you talk to listen to you? Like, that's foreign to me. I'm like, whoever you're talking to, these are anomalies. Do you know the reason that artists are doing content now? It's because they don't have a choice. It's not because somebody did an educational video and presented it to them and said, hey, this is actually a good idea. A few people, but a real reason is because Russell is seeing so much success doing it. Russ is seeing so much success doing it. The people that they admire and the people that they send these videos from to us after we've already told them to do this shit are doing it. And they're like, oh, well, if Bruh is doing it, I guess I could do it. Like, what? It's not because somebody educated them. Maybe 1% to 2% of artists, it's because somebody educated them. But I'm talking about even my most intellectual artist still wanted to have a conversation with his homie who has no music business experience, or with his wife, or with his best friend who also hates content, who's making music. They stumble into this shit because they have to. If you tell an artist they need to do something, they're literally like a child and they say absolutely not. And then they kick and scream. So it's like you have to almost do the opposite. So it's a crazy ass take, Jacory. I love you. What? Let me know when this works. Tell me. I've tried everything. I've tried the gentle parenting approach. I've tried the have somebody else on my team say it. I've tried the repost the article in my story because they've watched my last 8 stories. I've tried giving them a book. I've tried sending the link. I've tried talking about it on a meeting. Like, I don't understand. Like, I've tried a lot and I've done this. I'm not new to this game. I've done it. Again, 12 and a half years. This is why I got out of it, because you could do everything and it's still not enough, not good enough, not done properly enough. The way that this critique sounds is like an artist telling executives the reason that there's shit in the industry. So it blows my mind that it's another exec, because I'm like, maybe I need to look at more context. Maybe I should go watch the full episode. But this was a wild ass take to me. And to the gatekeeping point, which is what I was originally going to talk about this week, I love it. I bring gatekeeping back, please. What? Fuck all of y'all who have a problem with that. Because honestly, there's way too much shit going on in this industry because shit is not gatekept. If you don't understand what I'm saying, it's because you have no context for me, and that's okay. You can disagree with this. I want you to be educated, but I feel like everybody all the time having access to everything is actually terribly detrimental to this world. And I'm not just talking about the music industry. I'm talking about everything. If you can immediately porn on demand, food on demand, music on demand. All of this stuff on demand lessens the value of these things. You've never had to grow your own fruit? Oh yeah. So you just have a lot of shit wasted in your refrigerator while you're ordering Uber Eats. You know what I'm saying? When I was a kid, I grew fruit or I grew vegetables. It wasn't for survival, but I understand the process that it takes to get a tomato, a cucumber, carrots, whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a value in that. And I think that when people don't understand what it takes to get to a certain point, they immediately dilute it. So that's why somebody can look at you, Dame, not knowing what you've done, not understanding how much you've done for this industry and for hundreds, thousands, literally thousands of artists, and say, don't gatekeep. What? I'm gatekeeping the fuck out of a lot of this shit. Like my next era, I want to be known for taste. So everything I'm doing, including what I'm doing in LA next week, is gatekeeping. I'm building a community around the things that I believe in, and you have to be a part of the community in order to get it. So I'm not saying like this like man on top and you goons at the bottom don't get in, but there's got to be a level of curation that has to return to this industry in order for it to survive. And anybody who disagrees doesn't understand the value of true curation and the value of siphoning things. That's why funnels are necessary. It's just everything can't get through or everything is shit, literally.
Well, this is why the conversation is so ridiculous. Look at what we're doing right now. If you're watching this, this is a free music business podcast that we've been running for years. It was a mentorship program that eventually became free. It was a tour. We went all over the country speaking to artists everywhere. And we're the ones being called gatekeepers. The people that you don't see on the internet who actually aren't providing information and haven't been providing information, they're not being called gatekeepers because they're not even in the line of sight of these artists. So I don't think, beyond that, I don't think people understand that because they're just so angry, and a lot of people are dumb. I mean, there are studies that show that people who get angry and super emotionally unhinged are of a lower intellect, and people who are of a lower intellect tend not to self-direct when it comes to learning things that are necessary to excel in a field. So it's just this cycle. And then we get the anger of these lazy, low intelligent people who just don't want to figure it out themselves. And the thing is, like Erinn says, I've tried I've worked with artists. I've tried spoon feeding. I've tried literally writing out step by step, and they just don't want to do it. They just don't. They refuse. So the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I'm on YouTube, bro. I'm not in your house. I'm not in your face. Like, I can't physically pick your body up and say, all right, we're walking over to the laptop and I'm holding your right hand. We're going to do some SEO today. Call it
abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They call me a handler. They say, oh, the handlers, they're just trying to manipulate. They're trying to enslave their artists. All right, let's move on.
Yeah. We can move on to the next topic. But the last thing I am is a gatekeeper. I might be a gatekeeper to certain things that I work on because not everybody can work on the things that opportunities I present. But when it comes to information, I mean, we've been giving out information since with the first Funk Volume virtual conference was in 2012, I believe. And so I've been doing this shit for, it's actually embarrassing, 12 plus years. Like, the education piece for 12 plus years. So I've been in it long enough to know that the lack of education is not your problem. You know, you guys are looking for people to do the work for you. You guys are looking for shortcuts. You're looking for the imaginary red button, like I said before. You're not looking for information. The information is right in your face. So, yeah, we could definitely move on. This is ridiculous. Sorry, Jacory, but we disagree, all three of us, I believe.
Jacory, you got to come on here and explain yourself, because what?
Okay. All right, let's do the Russ video.
This is good.
A lot of people say saturated dough, so the cream doesn't rise to the top anymore.
Well, but listen to even that, right? That's them implying that they're the cream. What if they're not? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what if they're not? But no artist has that self-reflection. Like, nah, I can tell the cream doesn't rise to the top because I'm not at the top. It's like, what if you're not the cream?
That's actually cracking me up because actually that's true.
It is.
You have to have a level of honesty to be able to self-reflect and be like, I still have some work to do.
I can tell you this, right? In 2011, when I was making like my first songs, there was a mixtape called Velvet, and I did Velvet, Apollo 13, Straight from Limbo, 5280, Vacation, The Edge, Colorblind, Pink Elephant, Silent. It was like 11 mixtapes, right? For the first 8 mixtapes, I was living in just my own little bubble when I was making them, and I loved them. I thought they were the greatest shit ever. I would tweet like, "Oh, I'm about to blow up off of this," you know? And then I would go and play like Take Care by Drake. And I would have the honest moment like,
yikes.
No, my shit's not like
it's
that.
not there yet.
Yeah, it's not there. There's a huge...
This is why I think Russ is as successful as he is, because he could even do that.
But he hasn't always been able to do that, though. I mean, he acknowledged
I was about to say, this is grown up Russ. Let's be fucking for real.
Fair. Because I saw the screenshots when he was still on that I'm the hottest shit ever and fuck everybody else. But okay, that being said, I think every artist goes through that phase. Not every artist breaks out of that. I shouldn't say every artist goes through that. Not every artist goes through that phase. Some people are super realistic from the very beginning, and I see those people go on this steady trajectory of improvement if that's what they choose to devote their energy to. But I think this applies to everything. I mean, there are just people who can't self-reflect. There are people who don't have accountability. There are people who can't look inward and always look at everybody else, always blame external factors for whatever it is that they feel like they deserve but haven't gotten yet. And if you can't get to that point, I don't know. I mean, there are some people with very natural talent, high levels of natural talent, and they can get to a certain point, but if they can't self-reflect, there's always going to be that ceiling. I've seen that so many times, especially today. Maybe 30 years ago, artists could get away with that if they could get away with living in a bubble if other people were doing the heavy lifting for them. But today, nah.
My experience is that it's more, I don't know what the exact figures are, but more artists don't have the ability to do that than do. Right? I think it's way more that don't have the, because it's rare that I come across the artist that does have the ability.
This might be the greatest predictor of success in the music business. If your ability to self-reflect and criticize yourself. Well,
no, because there's a percent. I know that there's also, videos that go viral from time to time that say, and this might not be completely contradictory. Let me think about it for a second. But like the ones that say there's a certain level of delusion, because the delusion to me would make self-reflection harder. Right. So if some videos go viral, be like, hey, you have to be delusional to make it in this. I don't agree with. And of course, there's different people that make it different ways. So it's not all like, oh, you have to be delusional. Because I've seen some people take very measured approaches to things, very analytical approaches to things, and not delusional and make it. And maybe there are some artists that can live in this fantasy land. I think those artists probably have more support and a team around them to kind of like, when they make delusional decisions, there's kind of guardrails sometimes around those artists. But Russ has been cooking lately. Like, I used to disagree with Russ fairly often. I would say like 70-30. 70 agree, 30 don't agree. But recently, like, I feel like Russ has been cooking. I've been on board with most of the things that he said. Because I think a lot of it early on was him not acknowledging some of the natural gifts that he's been given. And how that's contributed to his success. But lately he's been cooking. There's another video where he talks about, all you need is great music, great branding and consistency. to start moving. And I think to start moving, really, that's all you need. Like once you start getting some traction, then the infrastructure might need to be there, the team and things like that. But it really does come down to great music, or at least music that resonates with. Great is relative. So let's just say music that resonates with an audience, great branding and consistency. I agree with that. So Russ,
we covered a video that we disagreed with where Russ is the one saying artists have to be a little delusional to make it. And
I'll definitely have the argument about that, because dealing with a delusion, there's so many delusional artists that don't make it. So when an artist hear that it's okay to be delusional and they rest in that delusion and then they just get lost in the abyss, you never hear about them. But then you hear about the one artist, the Kanye or whoever that was hella delusional and made it. So you're talking about one great delusional artist out of the thousands that got lost in the abyss. And you'll be like, yeah, you have to be delusional. That's the argument.
That the delusion is misrepresented because
it's the wrong word.
I've adapted. I had to be delusional to believe that I could make it in this industry, especially the type of person I am. I am a Black woman in America, and there's no foundation for me because I don't have an education. There's nothing to fall back on in this industry. So the delusion is that I could make it in spite of friends, family, and stats saying this doesn't make sense. The amount of bands that succeed, the amount of money that you'll make, it's this doesn't make sense. So that's where I think
is delusion the right word though, Erinn? Is delusion?
Let me look it up.
Because even if the chance is small, you recognize that the chance is small, and then hopefully you do everything to increase the chances of having the success, even if the chance of having the success is small. Let's just say, in general, there's a 5% chance that you make it. Right. But if you do these 10 things, you can maximize, you can get as many tickets to the raffle as possible. If you do these 10 things, you're going to look at that and be like, okay, it is a 5% chance, but I'm going to pull all these levers to give myself as many raffle tickets as possible to win the prize. I don't think that's
I'm
delusion.
with you. Reading the definition, I think it's a thing of connotation versus denotation, what we think it to mean versus what it actually means. Because it says characterized by holding a false belief or judgments about external reality that are held despite exceeding evidence to the contrary. Typically a symptom of a mental condition. So maybe delusional is too far-fetched. Maybe it's you said, very small percentage. Looking at this definition, I agree with you, Dame. I think when I say delusional, it's overwhelming evidence. If somebody says there's a 98% of your 98% statistical chance of your failure, I still think it's delusional if I have a 2% chance of success. So when I first got into the music industry, I remember finding this stat, I think Bandzoogle or whatever, they said that less than 1% of, because SoundCloud was huge at this time, less than 1% of artists who release music on less than 10% of artists who release music on SoundCloud make any money from their career. And it was less than 1% were making a full-time living. And at that point, they were judging it by the US household income, which I think was $42,000 per household or something like that. So they were saying less than 1% were making $42,000. I knew that stat, saw that stat, and was like, not my artist. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's maybe if you consider that delusional, maybe, because the thing is, the reason that I have to be crazy is because if my artists are only making 42,000, that means I have to take them far past that to surpass it.
But it's not about the stats though. That to me, so for example, I sent you guys that link to that artist, Truth the Bull, right? Immediately you guys saw that he was different, right? Delusion to me is me thinking that I'm going to make it, but I don't have no interest in learning the business. I have no interest in creating great content. I'm not going to be consistent on social media. You're not going to do the things and still expect to win. That's delusional. Like if you do all of the things.
The reason that I feel like I consider myself a little bit delusional going in, and not that I'm trying to call myself mentally ill, is because I came in saying, I want artists to own their masters. I came in saying, I want this, and this, and I'm still going to make money. I came in saying, I'm not playing by these rules. I'm not doing this game. And so like, I feel like I've had to chart my own path, and it's been more difficult because there are routes for me that I could have taken that I chose not to take. And I'm like, no, but I'm still going to succeed. Even now, it's like all the shit that happened to me over the last 2 years. And I'm like, it's not going to stop my success because it's not about outside factors. It's about me. I think that's where I'm saying, like, if you're examining like by metrics, like this, and this, I'm like, I don't give a fuck because it's me. Like, I'm going to win. So I feel like that's the thing that separates me maybe on the, like, and I'm with you. I'm not fighting for the word delusion because reading the definition, I'm like, yeah, but I'm always like, since I was a kid, I'm like X, Y, and Z, and people are like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. I'm me. Like, literally, it's going to come out of my brain. I'm going to get a download. It's going to come out and I'm going to figure it out. So I think I've always bet on the fact that it doesn't have to make sense for me to win. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to win regardless because I'm built that way.
But even if your understanding of how the game works changes over time as you get access to new information, like you're processing that and moving accordingly. The delusion is not, I don't give a shit how the game works. I'm just going to win. I'm not going to do all of the things I need to do to win, but I'm still going to win. Like that to me is like, there's a lot of artists right now that think they're the hottest shit ever. But there's literally no specks of facts that would allow anyone to lean in that direction, right? Like there's no traction on Spotify. There's no plan for content. There's nothing. But that to me, when people hear delusion, like that to me is more what people think about than, just looking at an industry and saying, 5% of people, because those numbers can be deceiving, right? Like, okay, 5% of people make it, but what are those people? I'm not like those people. Like I'm a whole different pedigree. Like I got more drive than them. I feel like I'm smarter than them. I feel like I build. So what's the information for people like me? Because people like me, I would probably say the success rate is 85%. They don't create charts for people like us. I agree with that. And even when it comes to the self-awareness thing, I've talked about this a lot. I've podcasted about this before. I think I brought it up when I read it. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I read this study. By Inc. magazine or Inc. 100, whatever. They surveyed 1,000 leaders, like C-suite people at the head of companies that were anywhere from, Fortune 500 all the way down to Fortune 1. And they asked them, like, what do you feel like are 3 things that make the difference between how you were able to get here, right? And after they surveyed them, whatever, the surveyors said the thing, not that they necessarily said, some of them said this, but it was a thing that the surveyor observed, that of all of the traits, the most consistent trait with all 1,000 of these people, or most of the 1,000, was self-awareness. So they were like, the survey was like, an overwhelming, I think it was like 93 or 94% of the 1,000 people were self-aware. And they were like, some of the things that they had, maybe only 1 or 2 people had those things, but all the rest of them were like, yeah, self-awareness. So I completely agree with that. Cause I will say, when I started, I thought away. Last week, I thought away. Yeah, like you said, I'm a fan of changing my mind when new information is presented because I want to rapidly adapt and rapidly evolve. And when I do that, it gives me the ability to say, I'm not playing this fucking game because I have an understanding because I've taken the time to learn. So I'm with you, Dame. I'm just saying delusion from maybe a connotation standpoint as far as it doesn't make sense statistically, but I also don't give a fuck about stats because I'm Erinn. Every time I touch the court, I'm going ball. But I just feel like, and I know we're on the same page, but like, to even talk about it, and like you said, self-awareness was key in, successful people. To me, they're not exact opposites, obviously, but delusion and self-awareness are on completely different sides of the spectrum, unless you're self-aware that you're delusional. But like
I have been, though. I don't talk about everything that I believe about myself or that I see in the world, because I understand that it's not for everybody to understand. Because if I were to, there are things I'm doing now. There are things I will be doing in the next 2 or 3 years. If I were to talk about them, people would be like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think I'm self-aware enough to know that I create the future. And if I'm talking about it all the time to people who don't have the same type of mindset as me, even to people who do, well-intentioned people who do, it still doesn't make sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand 100% what you're saying, but to me, again, it's just the wrong word, because if you have a history, it could
be innovation or something like that.
If you have a history of creating these things, but you're still finding people that don't understand the next things that you're going to be creating in the next 2 or 3 years, but I've already created hella things. Like, so you're the one that's delusional or just not understanding or just not, on my level, essentially. So yeah, I just think people hear delusion and like they rest in it. They want to hear that because they know that they're delusional. They're like, oh, okay, cool. I could be that and still make moves. Like,
it's a great place to push your insecurity, because you can just say, no, you just don't get me, instead of being right. Instead of having to work for some of the evidence of what you're. So I see what you're saying. Instead of having to work for the evidence, you could just be delusional and then be like, y'all just don't get it. I hate when people too, especially when people are really great. I know so many artists who sat in their genius and refused to explain it, so to speak. Do you know what I'm saying? I think there's so many genius parts of myself. And I this is probably the first time I've said this out loud, right? To the podcast. But I feel like if this genius can't be expressed in a way that people can understand and consume at least parts of it, it's like with Andre 3000, there's still stuff we're catching up to that he did a decade ago, or Kanye, or whoever, Freddie Mercury, whoever you consider a genius, there's still things we're catching up to. But there was some parts of it that were delivered in a way that we were able to consume it and evoke it, so that we said, hey, I love this thing, even if I can't tangibly explain or express exactly what it is that I love. So I feel like part of the genius has to be translation. If you cannot translate what you're doing, then you can't consider yourself fully a genius, because it's just locked in the prism. You got to pull that shit from the ether and be able to give it to the real world.
Agreed. Payne, let's bring us home with your topic.
I don't know if you remember our conversation about Tiffany Red, if you're watching this, but this relates to that. So I thought this was crazy. I covered a Randy Travis. It was a really emotional video that I saw. And to me, it was the best case for using AI in music, because Randy Travis had a stroke, I believe, and lost his voice. And so they were using AI so that he could still perform and create new music in the studio. And, it was a cool video. Randy Travis recently, over the summer, appeared before Congress in support of something called the American Music Fairness Act. Now, the American Music Fairness Act sounds great. And I'll read the USA Today piece on it. It says, when I tell friends I went to Washington, this is by David Byrne. Oh, wait, no, it's not by David Byrne. Yeah, it is by David Byrne. When I tell friends I went to Washington, D.C. to lobby on behalf of the American Music Fairness Act, which will enable musicians to get paid for radio play, they uniformly respond with a look of shock. What? You don't get paid when you're played on the radio? Nope. As a performer, I get nothing. Does anyone get paid? Songwriters and music publishers, but not the artist you hear singing it. So, all right. I just want to hit the pause button there. Erinn shaking her head. It goes on to say, Aretha Franklin had a worldwide hit with Respect, but she didn't write the song. Otis Redding did, so she got paid nothing. Nothing for decades of U.S. radio airplay. That's what I'm talking about. And then they list a whole bunch of other songs like Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You, which Prince wrote. Willie Nelson's Always on My Mind. Who I forget who wrote that. Umbrella by Rihanna, which was written by, I believe, The Dream. I think they just list a bunch. So this really paints songwriters out to be these evil, greedy, money-hungry folks, and these poor artists are actually getting jerked by the music business. Except every damn one of these are multi-millionaires. I mean,
I didn't read the article, but just hearing what you said, that's not what I take away from that, right?
Well, so they are positioning artists as victims in the music industry because they're not getting paid.
But at the knife of the writers or the industry?
That no one ever blames the system. It's always individuals.
But the writers have nothing to do with this. Like, it's not the writer's fault.
Well, we know that, Dame. But does the average USA Today reader know that?
Is that's the tone of the full article? Is that it's blaming?
No, I'm just saying that articles like these are dangerous because of how they present the topic to people who aren't in the music business, and they don't provide proper context, mostly because the readers don't want proper context, and even if they got it, they wouldn't know what to do with it because it's just not fun.
And the writer may not know how to put it in the proper context. To be honest,
that's another point. So anyway, I was because they don't have
context for the industry, so it's like they don't even know that they're not doing it right.
Well, regardless, there's this Music Modernization Act, or not Modernization Act. That's a good one. I like that one. There's the American Music Fairness Act. They're making the argument that, which I think is a false argument. It says this is from Rolling Stone. Now it says, well, songwriters have long received royalties when their music was played over American terrestrial radio. The same hasn't been true for performers. The American Music Fairness Act aims to rectify that. Randy Travis' testimony stated, what would sheet music sound like without a voice? And what would radio sound like without a song? Well, that already doesn't land for me because, especially when you're talking about something like a classic, like that, the Aretha Franklin example, that song already existed. You're singing a cover and you're getting paid in other ways off of that. But what they're making it seem like here is that this is an unfair situation and that artists, the performers, the people who don't write the music, the people who perform the music and then benefit from performing it, like the Rihannas and the Beyoncés, some of the richest people on the planet, at least in the music business, because of this act, they should be getting paid more. So what does that mean? Where is that money coming from?
Like, this is why the performers were trying to take some of the publishing because they don't get royalties from things like radio.
Well,
right?
But they already are, is what I'm saying. This has been happening forever where the performers are getting a piece
of the publishing.
Yeah. Beyonce is written as a writer. And we know, like, on this track, it was written by The Dream, but here's Beyonce. She's also a part of that. If I looked up, they kept bringing up Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson is registered on a writer on a lot of his music. So if it's phrased in a way that presents these performers as victims, because it was Tiffany Red. So, like, let's just compare. Let's compare Tiffany Red's net worth to Beyonce's. Beyonce's a billionaire. Compare anyone's net worth to any of these artists. I just don't understand why they need this level of advocacy and legislation.
So Payne, would your stance be like this act is complete BS and performers shouldn't be compensated for music played on the airwaves, or are you fighting for the pie to expand so that performers can receive royalties from radio play? Like, what would your ideal scenario be?
But yeah, my ideal scenario would be everyone gets paid more, but the reality is songwriters are in such an awful position right now, and for something like this to step over the struggling songwriters to put more money in pockets of artists who are already multi-millionaires, if not billionaires, just shows you how sick this business is, because this is a much sexier story than the Tiffany Red articles, you know, because it's like, oh my God, Rihanna doesn't get paid for any kind of radio play. This is an outrage. And it's really not an outrage. It's because the people who write the songs stand to benefit far less than the performers when it comes to financial benefit. In I would say the vast majority of cases, there are I know songwriters who have written hits who have won Grammys and they couldn't even afford the Grammy. Well, the performer of the song that they wrote just made another 10 million because they were able to parlay their musical success into a movie role or a makeup brand deal. There's just so much. They're the ones that are front facing, and you don't become that big of a performer without having some kind of mass appeal. You know, if Rihanna can do anything, Beyonce can do anything. The Dream, he's rich. He's doing well, but he went solo, and I'm sure that didn't hurt. But they were also writing massive hits. There are a lot of songwriters who aren't at that level, who are still writing on these albums. Shit, the story about who was the guy that wrote a bunch of Drake songs? That was a tragedy. Oh my God.
Quintin Miller.
Quintin Miller gets jumped, gets in a car accident, is talking about he's not making any money off of any of these songs. Compare his net worth to Drake's net worth. It's not, you can't even, the numbers don't even, they shouldn't, they can't, no.
Got Drake's voice. You know, like Drake wouldn't be Drake without Quintin Miller. I think this is different though, because first I want to say, before I like lead into this, because I have a kind of a sideways take on this. I think that I love Randy Travis. He has one of my all-time favorite country songs. It's called If I Didn't Have You. If you're into country music, you should go listen to it. And it's written really well. I just went and looked to see if he wrote on it, and he didn't. He just performs it. So I think the positioning of this is a little bit, I think saying Rihanna and Beyonce is not the point. I feel like he was hitting on the Aretha Franklin's, Willie Nelson's, people like him, legacy artists who essentially are older and can't perform or don't perform or have passed on, but their music is probably still getting some sort of radio play, right? So I understand where his critique and frustration is because he's at a point in his career, again, his voice, he can't perform. So it's like, whereas a PRO is going to pay you every time you perform live, plus you're going to get, the publishing from a handful of different places. Like, the PRO is going to pay you to perform it live when you're in the space. Then you're going to get the guarantee, and then you're probably going to get potentially tour support or whatever. So if all of those things are off the table, for sure his pie is cut very small. This to me is a way bigger industry issue. Like Dame is saying, it's not about the songwriters. It's about the industry. It's, I think, even also about the labels and their greed and not reverting things or like doing a rev share with their legacy acts who have been giving them abundance for 10, 20, 30, 40 off of his catalog. I'm sure Randy Travis's catalog has helped whoever, Warner, Universal, whoever he's under, sign probably hundreds, if not thousands of acts and fund those to create more things. So I do think there needs to be a lot more equity, especially for legacy artists. I just don't know if this is the way to go. I think that if you're lobbying the government, it needs to be put back on the biggest owners of the music and the conglomerates that make this industry so cannibalistic, right? Like we, as the people below, are cannibalizing each other, which is what you're saying, Payne. It's like, oh, well, we got to get this. The songwriters need to give us some parts back, or the producers need to give us some parts back. And it's like, no, the labels could give us the money. Like the reversion acts, there could be a lot different. And even with the reversion act, it's like there should be a degrading, or maybe once you reach 10x, 20x, 100x, whatever. There needs to be a rev share. I don't know. I just think that this is a very unique place to sit at where he is in his career and say that it's a songwriter issue. For me, it's hard to hear considering like all of the legacy acts that look like me who have nothing, even what they've written. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think about like the way that people, again, like me in this country have created and built the music industry, the way that Motown was built, the way the sound of American music was created, the way the sound of all music, Disney pulling from all these African artists, all these different things. So I feel like if we're talking about things that need to change, like if we're going backwards, there's got to be reparations in a lot of ways. And respectfully, Randy Travis, you're the last person on my list as a white country man who making music in this industry. Like, I feel like I don't know what his financial situation is. And I definitely feel like he needs to be done right. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I'm saying if we're going to,
he's a multimillionaire
here, let's go back to the source. Let's go a little bit deeper and look through all of these legacy artists who got a day rate to come record massive Motown hits, who were writing riffs and runs and things that have been sampled 1,000, 1,000,000 times over. Like, we got to go a little bit deeper. So my empathy doesn't extend to this act, even though I understand where he's coming from. But I think that the bottom feeder argument is that we got to pull more money from the songwriters or whoever. The contributors don't need to give any more. It needs to come from the people who are exploiting the contributions to make this a thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reason that this is even happening is because there are incredibly, that there's a reason they had to put the Beyoncés and the Randy Travises and the Rihannas in front at the forefront of this advocacy, because it's so shocking that they're not getting paid. But that's where my empathy ends, because those people don't need more money. It's smaller artists, and granted, looking more into the act, it's vague, the information that I'm finding, as it always is when it comes to any sort of legislation in the music business, but it would be an increase that broadcasting companies would pay. They claim they're going to exempt certain public, college, and non-commercial stations, but they're still increasing some kind of pay. Like, it says that those stations, like a community radio station that doesn't gain any money from any sort of advertising revenue, would pay $100 a year. So they are getting charged something based on this act. They're ensuring performers are compensated when their songs are played on terrestrial radio, and they claim that they are going to protect songwriters and publishers, ensuring no harmful impact on the public, performance rights and royalties payable to songwriters, musical work, copyright owners, and publishers. So they're it sounds like what they're saying is things will be the same for songwriters, but now performers will get paid more based on this royalty increase / annual fee that we're now imposing. But how much of an
effect is that going to have on people like Randy Travis? Respectfully, I mean, I think he's still getting airplay for sure, especially in a city like Nashville. But I can't see him. I don't feel like he's getting played. Maybe I'm mistaken. I'm not deep in the trenches of rural culture, or at least rural white culture. Are they playing Randy Travis enough to where he's going to see a bump in revenue for real?
I don't know, but what I'm saying is what you're saying, because this isn't going to extend to the session player. All the exploitation that was happening to musicians over the last 100 years will not be rectified by this act. Because why would it? This isn't an act meant to actually right the wrongs of the music industry. It's just meant to continue to pay people more who are already getting money. There are some people for whom this might benefit who aren't already filthy rich, but it's not going to benefit them in any substance. It's not going to change their lives. And so, I bring up Clyde Stubblefield all the time because he lived in my city and I met him, and that story is tragic because he pretty much, I'm saying this, is the most influential drummer when it comes to not just hip hop, but other genres, pre-hip hop, right? And everyone sampled his drum breaks. He wrote those drum breaks, but he was treated as a session player, which means when those samples got cleared, all that money went to James Brown and his label. When those tracks got played on the radio, all that money went to James Brown and his label and his publishers. Clyde Stubblefield didn't make shit. So I would support an act that changes that reality.
Well, why can't you have both? Like I don't see anything wrong with what this act is trying to do. Like, do you not agree? I mean, put other arguments to the side, put, what you think the impact this will have on performers' pockets aside, because some people will help more than others. Like, do you agree that performers that didn't write on the song should get paid from music that gets played on the radio? To my understanding, that's very common in other countries. Why is it not the same here? Like,
yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's fine, because I think I like that because it takes out that, like, the loophole of, okay, Beyonce wrote on this, Rihanna wrote on this. It takes that out, because I remember hearing about that. That became a thing because of what was happening in the Motown era and all these, where you have these huge artists. So I'm with you on that. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's got to be either or. I'm just saying this is not a place that I'm looking to, like, lean into and be like, yeah, we got to change this. I feel like if we're pulling it back here, let's pull back a lot further and be more intentional about actually righting wrongs versus just, like, sliding. Like, this looks like virtue signaling to me. That's what I would say. I would rather it be something that actually makes a difference, because I feel like it's not going to make an effect because of what it requires. It's not going to, in my opinion, affect people, except for maybe some one-hit wonders. I don't see it affecting anybody positively that really needs it, like, because it's saying, like, you got to be getting a certain amount of radio play already. Do you know what I'm saying?
How are we making the judgment of, like, what people need? Like, should this, to me, I see this sounds like differently. Like, it sounds, I haven't read the act, so I don't know all the details, but it sounds like a positive thing. And I think that, that's part of why, I mean, I think, like, Beyonce and Rihanna, like, taking some of the publishing, I think they do it because they can. Like, they just have the weight and they take some of the publishing. But I think another piece of it is probably like, hey, I'm not getting paid on radio. I need to get paid from radio. I should get paid from radio. So that's why I'm gonna take a slice of your pie. Hopefully, if this comes into play and they start making money from radio, maybe they're less likely to take, or maybe they don't take as big.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I agree with that, because I think it could help redistribute money to songwriters if that's the thing. But to me, industry standard means that's going to stay a thing. They'll take both checks, most likely. Do you know what I'm saying? They're not going to redistribute the proportion. But the reason I'm saying that I don't see it being effectual or helpful to anybody is because you already have to be in the position to be getting regular radio play for this to matter to you. So if you are a legacy act who's getting regular radio play and didn't write on the records, I could see that being beneficial. But are you getting enough radio play to where it's actually moving the buck forward? And that's what I'm saying. It just feels like a Band-Aid, because the issue is that the funds have not been distributed properly. It hasn't been done fairly. People have been in shitty deals, and decades later are still in those shitty deals. So this to me seems like a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. That's all I'm saying. I'm with you and I get what you're saying, but I don't think, respectfully, the Sabrina Carpenters and the Beyoncés of the world are going to be like, oh, I'm getting radio play now. All right, we don't have to section off 15 additional % for me with writing royalties. And maybe they will, but I don't necessarily see that happening. I just feel like once you take your share and you're used to getting that share, people just keep taking their share, and then they'll take the new share that's offered to them.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. And if I had to guess, people probably will continue to take their share. But I don't see anything wrong with this. I see that we're talking about, like, bigger issues that need to be solved and wrongs that need to be righted. But, like, I don't think it's healthy to, like, bring up bigger issues when somebody's trying to work on an issue that does make sense to me. I don't know.
I'm just saying it's not an actual solve for the issue. Yeah, that's all I say. I get what you're saying, Dave, but it's not an actual solve for the issue.
But the issue is relative, comparative to other countries and how things work. Like when radio plays, like performers make money from that. That's the only thing that this is trying to solve, and it sounds like it's solving that.
Sure, but one could also say
it might be a big issue to you, and there might be bigger issues for sure that need to be solved. But I see nothing. I don't see anything wrong with this. I don't.
But what's the difference between saying that and saying in other countries songwriters don't get paid?
What? In other countries? Because
if you're saying that this is rectifying, if we're comparing our royalty system to another country, other countries are way worse. There are some countries are better, some countries are worse. So we're picking and choosing what works based on who already is benefiting the most from the way the music business system has been structured for the last 100 years. And we're putting more money. It's just.
But just common sense, Payne. Do you think that so when you hear the radio, you're hearing Beyonce's voice, you unbeknownst to you, somebody wrote that and you love the song structure, but you hear her voice, you resonate with her story, her image, you love Beyonce. Like, do you not think that she should just comment? I mean, you can disagree. You can be like, no, she doesn't deserve to get paid from that. But just from a common sense perspective, like, do you think Beyonce should get compensated when you hear her on the radio?
I think from a common sense standpoint, yes. From understanding how the music business works, I'm shrugging at that because you just know how the label deals are structured. You know how the people who are considered actual songwriters are being compensated relative to how she's being compensated. And you start looking at it as a hierarchy and you think, okay, well, in order to answer that question,
you're doing some I think
Dame's
gymnastics.
No, I am, because morally,
yes.
I think Dame's point is that we can't say because the music industry is fucked that we shouldn't also do the right thing. I agree with you, Dame. I think that Beyonce should get paid when her music is on the radio. It doesn't matter how much money Beyonce already has, because I don't need to pocket watch her in order to say, if I'm hearing her voice, I would hope that she's getting paid. So I'm with you there. That's not my issue with this. My issue is that it's not actually fixing a real problem. And that's where I'm aligning with Payne. It feels like it's just giving, it's kind of like when the labels went to Spotify and they fought for more rev share. It's not to give to the artist. It's so that they can line their pockets. So with this, I'm just saying, I feel like it's not going to actually heal the issue that it's trying to help, which is that most legacy artists won't benefit from this act now because they're not getting the type of radio play that will reinforce. But I'm with you. Yes, I think Beyonce should get paid. Payne, I get what you're saying, but I think Dame's point is that just because the way that the industry is structured and Beyonce sits at the top in the money game doesn't mean that she should be rendered worthless in this equation. It just shows and displays how fucked the industry is.
And I think that your discount, like, there's a lot of cities in this country that play a lot of music that have, I know that the main stuff is kind of what's hot now, whatever, but most radio stations have their throwbacks. How many times do you think This Is How We Do It is played in a week, by Montel Jordan?
I'm not even talking about those. I'm talking about like the people, again, Motown artists who the song have been sampled to hell and they're never they're not getting any type of radio play. I'm talking about the super clandestine, country artists who had a moment in history where they were really hot and that song is forgotten. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about even the mainstream old school hits.
I think the only difference is you guys keep saying the real problem, and I just see it as a different problem. Like, you guys are saying it's not solving the real problem. It's like, no, that's just a different problem. Like, it's solving this problem. So if there's other problems that need to be addressed, I'm super on board with that. anybody that's been wrong. There's been a lot of people that have been.
I just think it's a microscopic problem. I think that's what it is. It's like there's a microscopic problem that we're sewing up, but somebody's bleeding from a gash on their side. But I hear you. I will agree with that.
Here's what's interesting too. So Sound Exchange, I guess there are a lot of different acts that have sought to create a change in the system so that performers and their labels are paid for broadcasting. So I think that's key. The labels are involved. But the amount that they estimate this is what it says. Because this is from Sound Exchange, because U.S. radio broadcasters refuse to pay artists, which is a weird way to say it on Sound Exchange, refuse to pay artists when they use their recordings on the air. I just have a problem with the way this stuff is being characterized. That's terrible wording. They're not refusing. That's the system that you people came up with decades ago because it benefited you. And now you want more. So now you're coming back and trying to change shit again. American artists and record labels are denied the estimated $200 million in performance royalties annually that would be paid to them in nearly every other nation. Because then again, if we're comparing it with other nations, the other nations don't have fairer systems. They're problematic too. But 200 million in the grand scheme of things, that's what they make in like a week off of streaming. It just doesn't seem like that much for them to want to fight for this with legislation. And this has been going on, according to Sound Exchange, since 2009.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's behind these things. These politicians are weird. You know, I don't have anything else to say in regards to this topic. Sounds positive to me. If it's not positive and there's some shady underlying this, then yeah.
No, I agree with you, Damon. And I think it sounds positive because it's being marketed as a positive. The marketing is amazing because there's a lot of money behind it. There's nothing sexy about digging up these legacy act bodies from the session players and saying, okay, this person played trumpet on, this Elvis record. This person played drums on this, Motown session, and their families are broke. They died broke. There's nothing sexy about that. You can't. There's no money behind marketing that, so it's just not going to happen. I'll be honest with you. My frustration just comes from that, from knowing how this shit goes down, and then seeing this amazing marketing rollout for this act that's mostly going to benefit people whose survival doesn't hinge on this. That's all. Is it fair? I'll concede, yes. Is it fair that Beyonce gets paid when her voice is on the radio? Yes. It's just a matter more of empathy, and that's where I agree with Erinn. But from a a logical, common sense standpoint, you're right, Dame.
Yeah, but I think should this come into play, I think there'll be some people that will be very appreciative of. I mean, I know we use some pretty high level examples in Beyonce and things, but I think there are some people out there that could use this money, and it'll probably impact their lives in a meaningful way moving forward, if and when this gets put in place. Like especially a lot of the one hit wonders, like I don't know. Vanilla Ice might be able to use it, or
I was just about to say Vanilla Ice is probably gonna be all right. He probably gonna be like, yeah, hell yeah.
But did he not write that song?
I don't know. I don't know. You guys know way more about like the background of music than I do. Like I'm just
because I like songwriters, so I'm always looking at songwriters. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. I mean, I'm sure Arrested Development wrote their Everyday People, but like just songs that I know still play on the radio. If you were to turn it on from time, and if you think about again, how many cities, I know radio is not as impactful as it once was, obviously, but like it's
people still making money from radio.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, we can wrap it up. I got to run.
Well, the broadcasters are making, I think it was 10 billion. So and this is off advertising. So I think that's what it is. I think,
so they should cut into that bread. Like that's probably why they saw. Right?
but that's what I'm saying. So like it's a corporate battle.
Like people.
Right. Yeah. But just hear me out. This is all I'm going to say. I'm being able to put it more eloquently. It's a corporate battle that uses artists as the face of the battle when they're really not the ones who stand to benefit. It's a battle between the labels and the broadcasting corporations, where the labels are looking at it and saying, damn, you made 10 billion. Yeah, we're making money like that, but we want a piece of it. And as a matter of fact, here are all these celebrities. Here's Randy Travis to tell you why it's unfair that this is the case.
But isn't that money going to the artists that you want to get the money paying?
And the labels.
Yeah.
And their labels, because but the articles are so sneaky about it. And when you read the language from the organizations that are pushing this act, they make it seem all about the artist, and then they'll mention, but the labels are being denied this money too. So I'm like, oh, wait, so how are you structuring this? So is it going to be a situation where the master rights owners are now being compensated just as the underlying because for some reason, the music business was traditionally split between the labels with the sound recording copyright and the publishers with the underlying composition copyright. And they would make all this money and they were happy making money hand over fist. The people that it benefited the least were the songwriters. And this is just an extension of that. So now you have radio broadcasting companies restructuring royalty rates so that they can pay the labels directly, and then the artists are getting paid out of, because I don't think that money is going to go straight to the artists. It's going to go to the labels, and the labels are going to say, all right, artists, here's your cut as a performer. Who knows how they're going to retrofit those deals, just as they did with streaming, so that the labels end up getting the most, if not all of it in many cases. That's what I have a problem with. I have a problem with a lot of stuff.
I'm with you, Payne.
This is just one more thing.
All right, let's wrap it up. I got to cut.
All right. Appreciate you tuning in to the MEC podcast. If you want to get your music out there before this act takes place, or maybe you want to get it in advance of the act because it might benefit you, it might not. 3 free months of music distribution, premium music distribution. Get your music on the Spotifys and the Apple Musics, and these smaller distributors. Maybe Dame can tell us more about those ones that smaller platforms that you may not be familiar with, but that have a user base on them. Go to tolost.com, use the code MEC. Helps us. It helps support the podcast. This is free. And it also helps you because you get your music up there. You monetize it. It's out there for people to access and listen to for free. 3 free months. tolost.com, use the code MEC. And it's simple as that.
So, peace.